Right now is a great time because we're seeing housing prices are kind of level off.
We got to be talking about the process, the documents.
Welcome to another episode of TF Team Podcasts. Between Dollars and Dreams, my producer, director in the back is kind of reminding me. I am your host this week. Josh is stuck at the border. I don't know if it's an Air Canada thing or if Donald Trump finally realized that he's not there legally. But hopefully he should be back in a week or so. He's enjoying some time with his family. So I'm all for family. Having said that, I have a new family friend right now, Kevin. Kevin is back again, and Kevin will talk to us. We're going to focus on this week about first-time homebuyers and purchasing a home. Well, welcome back, Kevin.
Thanks so much for having me back on. I always love coming back on here.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me back on. But today is a special day because we got to be talking about the process, the documents for not just for first-time homebuyers, but because first-time homebuyers are not as familiar with the process, we got to address that, right?
No, that is good. And right now is a great time because we're seeing housing prices are kind of level off. I mean, for most part, there's still some homes that are still in the GTA that are rising, but this is now's a good time, and I think you're right. I remember my first home way back in the 1800s. In terms of, I was scared because I didn't know the process. So maybe you could, we all want to buy a house. What should we know? What should we think about if we're getting ready to, maybe sign something to buy a house?
For sure. So I break this system up into 4 parts, right? So the first one is the income, which ties into down payment in a very large capacity. And then the next one is about the credit. So your credit score and the bureau, and where that ties in with debt. So how much debt you currently have and have accumulated over the time. So we'll start off with the income portion of it, right? So if you're alive and you're working, you're probably either working for a company, right, or you're working for yourself, or if you're working for somebody, you're either an hourly or salary worker. So that's really important. So the documentation that you should have ready and in place would be an updated job letter, right? Whether whether it's hourly or salary, it will indicate that on the letter. The company that you work for, whether it's full-time or part-time, full-time only, part-time is not really advisable as something that we can qualify. But you're going to have most recent pay stubs, right?
Now, how many would you like? Is it one or two most recent pay stubs, or would you want more than that?
So I ask for literally everything. I want the first, or not the first, but the last 2 most recent pay stubs, because it shows, obviously recently you're still employed there, right? But I also ask for T4s as well if you're an employee of a company. But the pay stubs are important, especially if you're an hourly employee, because then we can kind of see, depending on the situation, how that income was derived, right? How much overtime there has been, right? Because if you're an hourly worker, there's going to be 2 years of income that need to be averaged out, right? It's not quite the same as salary.
Yeah.
And the reason is because hourly is hourly, right?
Things change.
Right? So that variance is really, it's a risk for a lender, right? So if you have 20% or more variance, it needs to make sense. So when we go to the underwriter and we speak to the lender, stories have to align, have to make sense. If you received a raise, if you switched to a different department, it's understandable. But if it's there wasn't enough work, the company can't guarantee you 40 hours. It's a little bit of a risk. So that documentation is important, right? Notice of assessment, also I ask for it. It's not always required, but I ask for everything because I want to at least see the picture up front. So if I could, advocate and go at bat for you, I have a full scope.
And the notice of assessment, just for those who are maybe not aware, so when you file your income tax return, the government or CRA, I should say, sends you a notice which basically says everything that you've put on your tax return, how much money you made, how much taxes you paid, if you owed, if you owe or you received a refund, and also what your TFSA and RSP contribution limit. So it has your tax life right there. So that's a pretty important document in the eyes of lenders, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the next part of it, which is down payment, right? So down payment, wherever you have your down payment coming from, we need to source it back 90 days, right? That's generally what it is. They may ask for more, but 90 days is like safe bet, advisable. So we're gonna go back, look 90 days to see where that source came from. Is it from employment? Gift is okay too, but it there's going to be documentation that's signed that this gift is not going to be returned.
Yeah.
Right. It's gifted. It's given to you. Right. And it's
So basically, that a lot of times people will kind of, I guess this is what they're trying to avoid. They'll put money in to make it look like it's, that they have enough for the down payment, but they have to pay back, their friend or uncle. If you have to pay it back, then it's not a gift. It's really a loan. So if your parents or, friends or family are going to give you a gift, which is fine, but like Kevin says, we need a note or something that states that it's not to be paid back.
So the lender is going to provide that documentation for you to sign. It's going to be only from immediate family, so sibling, parents, children, that sort of thing. But as of now, like you can't have friends and cousins and.
Whew, I feel good. So Josh, wherever you are, I can't lend you any money for the down payment. That's because that's Kevin said that, not me.
Things change though over time. Like things may loosen up, or things may, depending on how society, the direction of the economy and society, like lenders may adjust their policies. Because a long time ago, for like rental properties, most lenders were not willing to allow gifted down payment for that. But even people and companies and the lenders have softened up in that regard, and it makes sense because it's tough to get like the down payment, right?
Big time.
So that's kind of where I would kind of want to talk about, because TFSA, it needs to just be traced back. It needs to make sense, right? And if the amount is very large, it's going to be questioned.
Yeah.
Right. So that's number two. The third thing is about the credit bureau, right? And the score. So I always tell people, pay your bills on time, always, and spend what you can afford to spend. Because when you have a credit score that is low, it's going to be hard for you to get favorable lending interest and products, right? So that's the reality. And also your utilization of your debt when it's too high, it also affects your score. But let's kind of dive into the second part of that part. And when you borrow too much and use too much credit, your a capacity to take on more debt is limited now because of the way that the lenders look at the situation. You're asking for more money to borrow, but look at this. You owe A, B, C, D, E, F, right? There's too many letters there that you owe.
You're bang on. I mean, a lot of people. I think we had an episode a year or so ago about utilization. If you have people that have 10 different credit cards, right, and they have all these lines of credit that are open. Yeah, it's not being used. You may have a zero balance, but it does impact your ability to get new credit, to get new lending. So yeah, it could have a zero balance, but if your total credit limit is like 100,000 from 10 different companies, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to get that house, or because you could rack it up to the 100,000 any time.
It could be impacted for sure. And I'll give you an example, like unsecured lines of credits. Sometimes, like for example, if you have a limit that's very large, even though the balance hasn't been used up, there's still risk there. So the lender may like evaluate the balance itself, or not the balance, but the limit itself, right? But if you have a smaller unsecured, let's just say 10,000 or something like that, it's not as impactful. But we need to look at it through the lens of a lender, right? And if you're not feeling super comfortable, it's very likely that the lender doesn't feel comfortable. if you had to lend out the money, you would evaluate it the same way they would evaluate it. Just saying, you know? So those are certain areas that we need to kind of tackle and address. And I always give everyone, like all my clients and people that I speak to, this advice. You're going to send all the documents. You're going to label them, right? So when I send out the list of the documents I need, I always number them: one, pay stub; two, whatever, right? Employment letter. I highly encourage you to label them to what they are exactly, because the easier it is for the broker to look at, the easier it is for them to explain to the lender. Because we work with underwriters on the lender side. They have thousands of files they're looking at. And if you're making it very difficult for them, if I can't understand the file and I have to ask you 100 times, it's going to be hard for me to like describe correctly to the underwriter. And then they may or may not approve those docs. So let's make it easy. Let's label them. Let's identify if there's a story that's involved. Let's make sure that story is like, we really understand the picture, because the lenders are not like, they're not like mean people. They just need to make sure it makes sense.
Exactly.
Right? Down payment, where's it coming from? Why is your, you know, why does your mom have a different last name? Okay, well, maybe she didn't change, you know, her maiden name. Things need to make sense, right? So we need to kind of align that way, because the lender is your partner too. They're going to lend if it makes sense and it's low risk for them. Let's not make them think something is high risk when it really isn't, right? That's that for the docs. And the next part of it would be, whenever we ask for the docs, please, very timely manner, because let's say your closing is coming up, which comes up pretty quickly, right? Like you put in an offer, you know, 30 more days, which is pretty common. You know, the longer, or you know, the closer it is to closing, and we haven't had all the docs. It's stressful. It could jeopardize the deal, right? Because sometimes, I'll be honest with you, things come up last minute where it becomes an issue.
I've seen that.
So we need to get those early as possible. So I always tell everyone, let's get a pre-approval before you even go shop.
Excellent.
Right? Let's get, for first-time home buyers, don't go crazy shopping first. Let's go and let's have a dialogue. Let's get on a Zoom call together, Google Meet, FaceTime. It's completely free. It doesn't cost you anything. Right? Let's do that so you're safe. When you go shop, you feel comfortable and you know where the pitfalls are. Now you're like, hey, I haven't worked this job long enough. Or maybe, you know, like maybe I have to wait, but you go and put in an offer now and you've only worked 3 weeks.
Actually, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you're looking, and if you're, you know, starting to get serious, you know, testing the waters, and you want to buy a house, call Kevin, make sure you get the pre-approval. Kevin will go through the steps and he'll tell you, you know what, you could afford a house between $600,000 and $700,000. There's no point trying to look for a house in the $1 million range when you could only afford $600,000 to $700,000. So you want to get all your ducks in a row. Kevin will tell you exactly what you could afford, and also kind of the pitfalls. You know what, your income, you know,
you might need a cosigner.
Exactly.
Do you have somebody like that in mind? You might say, no, I don't. Or is it like, no, I just don't want to bother this person? It's two different situations. No, I don't have anybody. It's different than, I just don't want to bother this person. Right?
But also the thing about the cosigner, people forget, right? Like, it could be my uncle. My uncle makes a lot of money, so I'm thinking, he could do it. But I don't know that my uncle has this amount of debt, right?
Or he's co-signed for like three of his kids already.
Exactly. So if my uncle has too much debt, he's not going to be. I'm not going to qualify. It's good. The numbers are not going to work. So that's why you got to go to my mom to co-sign. She has no debt. That is a 4-letter word to her. So you've got to know the family dynamics in a way when it comes to that.
There's so many nuances. That's why, you know, everyone always asks me, what can I qualify for? I tell them, just give me all your docs. We'll jump on a quick call. We'll talk about it, but there's no one size fits all.
You're right.
100% no one size fits all.
You're right. I mean, one last thing, because there's so much stuff that I want to talk to you about. But you got to come back for part 2, because there's way too much. that I want to talk about. But this last thing about we talked about one income. Could you tell me, because nowadays can't survive on one income. I
Yeah.
mean, I've got so many side things that are doing, but what about the gig economy, right? Uber, DoorDash people, how would you treat them? And their income is kind of not
Yeah.
stable per se.
So that's a difficult question
Mm-hmm.
to ask because those guys, I look at it this way. Those
Mm-hmm.
guys are not truly independent contractors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they are making cash and they're making some money on the side there. Depending on the lender, they would evaluate that income differently.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say is, if you have a side hustle,
Mm-hmm.
which is more aligned with what I'm thinking in my
Mm-hmm.
mind,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you have a small tutoring business that you
Yeah.
tutor. If you have, let's say you do painting
Mm-hmm.
part-time, if you're doing anything like that, don't be shy about speaking to your accountant,
Mm-hmm.
talking to them, seeing what makes sense, either incorporate or you have a sole proprietor,
Mm-hmm.
because those are income that's being derived
Mm-hmm.
that has, you know, eh, I mean, they could be taxed. That's a
Mm-hmm.
different story. I'm not a CPA,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't want to dive into that. But
Mm-hmm.
let's say, for example, you can potentially use that income to
Mm-hmm.
help, right? Depending on the lender, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
But that's not something that I would be totally against,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of, modern day big time businesses started off people's garages,
Exactly.
right? So don't be shy about, like,
Yeah.
don't ever have this self doubt that, oh, it's only a side gig.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you put enough energy and effort into it, you find certain holes in the market where
Mm-hmm.
you see the demand is there,
Mm-hmm.
that could become a real thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. That extra 500 bucks a month that you get from the site could impact your total debt service ratio and your gross
Yeah.
debt service ratio, and that could, make it from being a decline to a potential approval. So now the problem that I find that most, and that's a Canadian thing, we don't like paying taxes. All right. So when we have that side hustle, whatever it is, we want to show as little income as possible.
Yeah.
So we pay as little tax as possible. But then that will have an impact when you're looking to buy a house, because that little income
Yeah.
that you're showing will not be enough to buy that house, to qualify for that house. So I know one of the things you told me is that you probably want to talk to the accountant, making
Yeah.
sure that it looks legit. It doesn't it's two different things. Showing little income, all right, is good, but you have to be able to trace it back, right? So
I would
maybe we'll
say
talk.
this.
Yeah.
I want to give everyone a fair warning. I'm not a CPA, so I
Mhm.
don't want to give anyone tax advisory advice. But what I would say about that is, what I'm hearing is, there's something called tax strategy and
Mhm.
something called tax avoidance.
Yes, we don't do
Right?
it. Yeah,
We don't
yeah,
do tax avoidance.
yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, if you are going to pursue your side gig and it's a real business,
Mhm.
talk to your accountant about
Mhm.
how to structure it.
Mhm.
Because if you like, tax avoidance is not declaring tax. That's totally different.
Well, yeah, no,
Right?
you're right. I think we're a bit of semantics. I think what we're talking is tax evasion. Tax avoidance is
Yeah.
actually okay. Like doing a TFSA,
Yeah.
RSP, we're avoiding tax
Oh, yeah.
legally. But
Sorry, just
evasion, no,
yeah.
that's fine, and that's fine, because I'm not a CPA neither. So, right, but evasion is what a lot of
They
Canadians
don't
do.
want
They don't want to
pay.
declare. You
Yeah.
know what? I'm making $500, but I'm not going to tell CRA anything. Right? I'm making zero. Tax avoidance is showing that $500, but taking all the expenses that
Yeah.
you got and bring down that 500 to about, I don't know, $50, which is fine. But when you're doing the
Yeah.
analysis, we're going to go back to the five. We're going to go back to the 500,
I,
right? To try to incorporate that in your debt service ratios.
I work with my CPA,
Mhm.
right, very closely, and
Mhm.
my CPA is real estate investing focused as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So he's a real estate investor as well.
Mm.
So, and he practices, he has a lot of experience because he was worked at CRA. He's done public accounting before.
Mhm.
So when my conversations with him is really about understanding and navigating those
Mhm.
nuances.
Mhm.
So I advise everyone, talk to your CPA. If you if you want to connect with me and have this dialogue further,
Yeah.
I'd love to help where I can.
Mhm.
But it's very, very, very convoluted and very
Yeah.
nuanced. It's not that
Yeah.
black and white. And you were
Yeah.
talking about the income, right?
Mhm.
Like that could make a decline or a not or approval.
Mhm.
Well, it depends on the lender, depends on the program,
Mm.
depends on the policy. You know, like when we live in this field and we work in it every day,
Mhm.
like we think we know everything, but then things change, right?
Exactly.
All right, things get updated over
Yeah.
time. So it's one of those things where it's a dialogue, it's a one-on-one conversation,
Yeah.
truly. It
Mhm.
is. So
Kevin, we go on for you talked about lenders, right? One lender will approve, while the other may not approve. Let's talk. Let's take this to our next episode because I
absolutely.
because I think there's so much. So I think what I got from today's session with Kevin is number one, call Kevin. When in doubt, call Kevin. Get that pre-approval. Make sure that your income is in check. That you've got your job letter, preferably on letterhead from your employer. Don't
Yeah.
just draft up a job letter. You've got your job letter, you've got your T4, your two latest bank slips or pay
Pay
stubs,
stubs. Yeah.
I should say. And then just make sure that you've got everything in line and provide everything in a timely manner, and you'll be on your way to
I have the
obtaining.
list, so don't worry.
Call Kevin.
You don't have to memorize the list. I have the list. I can
Yeah.
send it out.
And if you don't know how to reach Kevin, call me. All right. So again, gotta have you back next week. Let's talk a bit more. But thank you again, Kevin, for showing
Appreciate
up.
you. Always.
And hope you enjoyed today's session. Josh won't be back next week neither, so you have me for two weeks in a row. So please enjoy, subscribe, and like, and we'll see you again next week, I guess. Bye for now.